The France 24 debate. We're looking at Egypt's choice now that we have the official names of those going to the second round, the first ever second round for the Arab world's most populous nation. That'll be on June 17th. It'll pit the Muslim Brotherhood's candidate Mohamed Morsi against Hosni Mubarak's last prime minister, former Lieutenant General Ahmed Shafiq. With us to talk about it here are from Cairo, Ahmed Naguib of the Tayyar Party. Also with us, George Hanna, who works here in Paris as a business developer and who voted for Shafiq. Hannah Youssef, an activist from the January 25th movement, who definitely, by the sound of part one, will not be voting for Shafiq come the second round. And Bernard Hakel of Princeton University. Welcome back to all of you. Now that both candidates, we know their names officially, and we've been talking about this, the liberals left out of that second round. Well, the candidates are courting them. Take a listen.
In the future, I will be the president of all Egyptians. I will also be close to everyone, those who voted for me and those who did not. That is my priority.
Your revolution has been hijacked, and I am committed to bringing it back.
All right. Ahmed Shafiq committed to bringing back your revolution. Who are you going to vote for in the second round?
The fact that Ahmed Shafiq is committed to bringing back the revolution is just a joke. It's just a ludicrous joke. He has been fighting against the revolution since he was in power with Mubarak. He was a prime minister during one of the big massacres in Tahrir Square. He was a prime minister during the 9th March events. And if we put that aside, he has been supporting the military regime that has, throughout the last year, killed 1,000 people. Just a few weeks ago, there was the events of Abbasiyah, which he now, just a few days ago, has said he will end the Tahrir demonstrations and use the same techniques as Abbasiyah, which were sending hired thugs with the knives and killing peaceful demonstrators, even going into the field hospitals and slaughtering people.
So will you be voting for Mohamed Morsi?
I have not decided yet what I'm doing, but I will not vote for the man who killed my friends. That's it.
The former Arab League boss, Amr Moussa, staged a press conference. He, as we were saying in part one, won a little over 10% of the vote. He told that press conference on Monday, quote, "We cannot accept a recreation of the Mubarak regime." But he says he hasn't yet spoken to the Brotherhood on any anti-Shafiq coalition. Quote, "I'm not going to consult them, but if they want to consult me, I will consider it." Abdelmonem Abdel Foutou went further. He said the most important thing is that the people don't vote for a falul. What is a falul? Can you?
It's a leftover from the old regime.
A leftover from the old regime. A lackey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if, just basically, the dregs of the old regime.
Let me ask you, Ahmed Naguib, have you decided who you're going to vote for in the second round?
First of all, you have to understand we have two tracks for the revolutionaries right now. We have Tahrir Square. We have the state court ruling, which the electoral committee does not have the authority, because the electoral committee is an administrative committee. Is not the fact that it's constitutes 5 or 6 judges does not make it a judiciary committee. It's an administrative committee and does not have the authority to refuse the ruling of the state court. This is answering back to George. And the forgeries were sent to the general attorney and were proven. Now, going back to the tracks, well, people are trying to push for Hamdeen Sabahi to come back on track. First of all, they're trying to take out Shafiq, which means that if this happens, it will be between Morsi and Hamdeen Sabahi. People of Egypt don't feel comfortable with either having Shafiq or Morsi because they don't want to give the Muslim Brotherhood everything.
But realistically, do you think that's going to happen?
Be held accountable.
Realistically, you think that could happen?
Well, it could happen. Everything is possible. I've learned through this year and a half that anything is possible when the people make it back to the streets anything is possible. But if that's not the case, we'll definitely give my vote to Mohamed Morsi, because people have been saying they're greedy. Well, I'd rather give my vote to a greedy person than a murderer and an embezzler. For the fact that the general attorney has blocked over 100 cases against Shafiq for over a year now, is a clear statement that the military regime and the Ministry of Interior and the judiciary are behind Shafiq.
George Hanna, what are your thoughts? Is it going to proceed as was announced today? Is it going to be a case of Mohamed Morsi versus Ahmed Shafiq come June 16th and 17th?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to just respond very briefly. It's like, give the democracy a breathe. You know, we went through a long procedure. We were not even sure that we're going to have election in Egypt. We didn't trust the military, and at the end we have an election. So there is two candidates. Let's focus on them now. We need to be all gathered around one person. With all my respect to people's choice, but we need to get gathered around one person. I want to also respond to Hannah on the point of he was in power. He was in power for 2 days when they had the killing, what we call the Gamal scenery, and he came in Egypt on the power in a very difficult moment where the chaos was overwhelming everything in the country, and nobody can take any decision, and everything went out of control.
But he is from the Air Force, from the same branch of the army as Hosni Mubarak. He's considered someone who's close to Mubarak.
But he was never in the Mubarak, close, and he's never in the Watani party. He was never one of his direct minister. He was only in charge of the civil ministry, and I think he made a lot of achievement as within the boundaries of his job.
We were talking in part one about the whole fact that we're having this election before the Constitution has been written. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter, who was on hand to monitor, had questions of his own, and again, not so much about the results that we've just been talking about, but about what happens next.
It's the first time that I have ever participated in an election for president of a nation when there were no description of the future duties of the president who was being elected.
Bernard Hakel, so what is going to happen as a result of all of this?
Well, I think that
who's going to write this constitution? Is it going to be Parliament as stated right now, as what's planned right now?
Well, I think the army, I mean, a deal will have to be struck with the army to decide on what its future role is going to have to be within the Constitution, as well as its privileges and economic privileges that it has in the army. I'm not quite sure what form that negotiation will take. Also, it seems to me that if you have a president who's from the Muslim Brotherhood and you have a parliament that's dominated by the Muslim Brotherhood, you have a lot more power potentially to decide on the form and the content of the Constitution, but you will have a polarization with the army against
and
these
how much
two
power
other
will
factions.
that president have?
It's not clear. I mean, it's not clear to me. And I think if he mobilizes people in the streets, for instance, against the army, which he could do, with the support of the parliament, that could sway things in his favor.
George Hanna, if Mohamed Morsi wins fair and square, you'll recognize the result? Will it just be okay and you come back in 4 years and try again?
No, of course, but I have a big doubt on coming back in 4 years. I think if Muslim Brotherhood will get to the power, I think they will keep it forever. And we have a lot of examples. I don't want to mention it, but we know on the whole area what's happened when the religion authority take over the power. And I'm just looking for a civil country, liberal country, led by non-religious people.
Right now, everyone's waiting on the makeup of that constitution. A constitution will be drawn up by a parliament where nearly half of the members hail from the Muslim Brotherhood's Freedom and Justice Party. Nearly 3/4 of that parliament, Islamists in one form or another, which brings the question, Hannah Yusuf, does George have a point there?
I think, first of all, I'd like to say the idea of a civil state That's something that many revolutionaries are fighting for. But Ahmed Shafiq does not represent the civil states. He represents a military state, with a military that is a state within a state. So I think that should be crystal clear. Another thing I would like to say is that there's two big cases in the higher constitutional court, and one of them is the dissolution of the parliament due to problems with the elections. So I believe that the military will not transmit power to civilian authorities, unless civilian institutions, unless these civilian institutions protect the interest of the army. So we have two things. Either we have two things in the higher
because
constitution.
that court is stacked with people who support the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces.
Yeah.
Amin Naguib, do you agree?
To a great extent, but I want to say that the Muslim Brotherhood are smarter than declaring a religious state. This demonizing of the Muslim Brotherhood, I think it's a bit extreme. They have their faults, they have their successes, and they look up to the Turkish model a lot. And I mean, they've said this so many times that they look up to Turkey. They understand that it's their myth that is at stake. If they manage to deliver, which is going to be the real challenge, which is the economy, then they will be able to bring more reforms. If they talk about religious state, people will make it to the streets. People will revolt against them. They are not that keen on, making a religious state out of Egypt. This is just a way that the discourse that Omar Suleiman people, the intelligence community, and the national media in Egypt have been promoting to scare people away from the Muslim Brotherhood.
And what's the likelihood?
They've had major fallouts.
Amin Naguib, what is the likelihood of what was just being described there by Hana Youssef of Parliament being dissolved by this higher constitutional court?
It's quite likely, because it's a threat tactic that the military council has been using. But that's why it's very important to have Morsi in the presidency seat, because it takes away that power from the military council. And even if this council is dissolved, even if the parliament is dissolved, it will only take a couple of months for the same results to come out. People think that by dissolving the parliament that they will take away major number of seats from the Brotherhood. I seriously doubt that. A difference of 10 to 20% of the entire seats would change. More Falul will fall out, such as Mustafa Bakri, who is more or less also a mouthpiece of the military council inside parliament. So it's a very dangerous game, and it's a survival issue between the military council and the Brotherhood. There's a love and hate relationship, and we've mentioned this before, but both would very much like to do without the other, but they understand they can't do it without the other. So agreements will have to come. The whole concept of transitional justice is key and critical at this time.
Let me turn to the scholar here, Bernard Haeckel. Revolutions, when you go to college, you learn how they always follow this pattern, and everybody looks at the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution and everything. What Amin Naguib is just describing here is something that's not in any textbook.
No, it isn't. And, typically revolutions also eat their own children. That is, they become much more radical before they quiet down. What I think is going to happen is that the army is going to basically say, you can have a civilian government with a president and a parliament, but real power will still be with us. Will still rest with us, and we're willing to make certain cosmetic accommodations to the civilians. And the civilians are going to have to push back and say, no, we really want real power, and we're willing to mobilize people in the streets in order to do that. And that's where I think Egypt is headed, ultimately to a clash over where is real power going to be vested in this country, with the civilian authorities or with the military.
And on the street in Egypt, people are divided. People are still digesting those results, even though the preliminary ones became obvious as early as last Friday. Is Egypt on the brink of more bloodshed as a result of that clash that you describe? Well, it depends on who you ask.
الانتخابات في تقديري هي مقبرة الثورات.
This vote is the end of the revolution. It transfers the revolutionary mechanism to a mechanism based on the influence of money.
We'll give them 4 years. If they really want to fix things, we'll know. If not, they can go. What is 4 years? We've been suffering for 30 years. The Muslim Brotherhood already have the upper and lower houses of parliament and everything else. What difference will it make if they get the presidency as well? Let them have it.
George Hanna, what difference will it make?
No, I think it will make a lot of difference because sometimes you cannot go back to the starting point, especially brotherhoods are very well organized and they have plans established for a long time. I think this is what makes the difference because this is a party that can gather other people in a second, comparing to the other party that we see the example in the parliament, for example. They took over a lot of places, not because they were here and present, but just because they were gathered together. And we had, between revolutionary and liberal, we had different orientation. If we didn't have one way to go for it. So I think they will reformat the whole situation to make it, as I said before, in my personal point of view, take the power for years and years and never let it go again. This is their dream for 50 years now.
Hannah Youssef?
I would like to comment about what the Khamisi said. I think there are two misconceptions about the Egyptian revolution, and one of them is that its success is defined by the formal institutions of power, parliament, upper, lower houses, and presidency. And the other one is that the revolution is what we're seeing in the Tahrir Square and in the streets and the clashes with the military. And I think these two images are propagated in Egypt and also in abroad to contain the revolution to something safe. We want a parliament, and then we want to be like the West. But actually, there is such fundamental dissent and fundamental discontent in Egyptian society, and the revolution is actually everywhere. It's in the port workers, there are strikes all over the place. It's in the Bedouin community. It's in the universities. It's everywhere.
And it gets back to what I guess we could say is the consensus on this panel, which is fixing the economy, which is something, of course, which still remains in the future at this point.
But the question is fixing it how? We have a predominance of Chicago-based economic thought, both in the old system and I would say among the two finalists. Yeah. We're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, Hannah Youssef, because we're out of time. But I want to thank you. I also want to thank George Hanna for being with us, Bernard Hakel, and from Cairo, Ahmed Naguib. Thank you for being with us, by the way, here in the France 24 debate. Stay with us. Coming up next, Matthew Warren will give you all the latest business news, including what's happening in Spain with Bankia. Stay with us.